Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are, everybody. My name is Jeff French, and I'm really delighted to be with you here today at the GovComms Festival. And I'm going to give you a presentation over the next kind of 40 minutes or so, focused on why I think it's absolutely essential for developing a more citizen-focused and driven approach to social policy, and why government communications is a key central part of delivering that. I'd much rather be with you, seeing you, looking at the whites of your eyes and face-to-facing with you. And I'm sure, like me, you're getting fed up with these kinds of sessions and can't wait for us to be in a room together where we can have some actual interaction. But there you go, we are where we are. I look forward in the years to come to seeing you more in person. Okay, so I'm just going to go through the slides and talk to them. If you want to contact me afterwards, please do. My links are here. My assumption is that you're going to get copies of or access to this PowerPoint. There's a lot of detail in this PowerPoint and some quite complex charts that I'm going to kind of walk you through. If you have any problem getting it from the organizer of the GovComms Festival, just contact me direct and I'll send you the link to it so you can download and take a look. Very happy for you to share the materials with others. Okay, so if you want to contact me, here's the details. This is what I'm going to try and cover in the next kind of 45 minutes or so. Seems to me, my argument is that we face huge changes in social, health and economic factors and technology, global economic order that are coming in to play at an increasingly fast pace, not driven just by COVID, a series of other factors. Certainly COVID is kind of supercharging this as well. A driver towards the necessity for more citizen engaged, citizen-focused co-creation of solutions and better social policy. This may seem a bit kind of abstract, but it's absolutely fundamental to what it is to be a citizen, the relationship between the governed and the governors, between all sections of society. It's about how we view power and how it's exercised in society. It's about respect. It's about using all the assets that we've got to tackle some of the really difficult social problems that we face. And it's also about personal and collective responsibility. So these are big issues. And again, I think government comms and how that's run, how it's focused, is a big part of how we tackle some of these issues and engage with them in a meaningful way. This is the structure of the presentation. Why we who work in government communications or advise or work with government communications roles need to work with people more, engage with them more to promote social development in all fields. How to actually go about doing that? How do we create more citizen-focused, systematic approaches to developing more effective and efficient and ethical social programs? And some examples about how we can actually do that from around the world. Okay, so this is a truism, oldie but true. If you want to influence somebody, you have to walk in their shoes, look through their eyes, and hear what they hear. We need to, as a fundamental building block of this approach to working, is invest more in understanding the people that we seek to serve. Not just understanding them, but actually engaging them as well in the co-creation of the solutions to some of these social problems. It's not about government comms and others doing stuff to people, seeking to change them. It's about a collaborative effort to create sustainable, effective, efficient, and ethical social programs. Why do we need to be doing this? Why can't we just carry on? There is great government comms work out there, and you've seen some of it and heard some of it already in this festival. But doing what we have been doing as we've been doing it to this point, I believe, is not a tenable medium to long-term response. We need to up the game. We know, for example, that significant sections of populations in most countries now display low trust in the governments in general, and particularly in relation to COVID, and I'll use a few examples of the current crisis in the presentation, in relation to things like vaccine safety. You know, in some countries, 50% of people are saying they're not necessarily likely to take up COVID vaccines when they become available. We also know that vaccine hesitancy has steadily increased. WHO reports show that it's increased by 90% since 2014. So this is a huge gap or chasm between the governed and the providers of service and those that may take them up. The people that we're seeking to influence across, low, middle, and high-income countries have changed hugely. They are not and don't want to be passive recipients of government dictates and handouts. They want to be actively engaged. And those people that and countries that have sought to do that during the current epidemic, for example, pandemic, places like Vietnam, where the engagement with citizens in the co-creation of positive behaviors to control the virus have proved to be much more effective than countries where people have been told to do things by government. We know that there's a global tsunami of popular dissatisfaction leading to all kinds of disruptions in our actual political systems. People want more voice, they want more control. And just, assuming that people have got it wrong, they don't understand, and they need to be persuaded to do things differently, is incredibly patronizing. Most people in the world, global literacy rates, numeracy rates, access to information rates are skyrocketing. People want to be engaged, they want to be empowered, they want their say, they want to be listened to. If you take, the basic question or proposition, politicians don't care about people like me, what you can see is across the world, lots of people that tend to agree with that. This is a worrying challenge for many, many governments and societies. However, this kind of failing trust, we're not in a vacuum about how to respond to that, what we can do. There's lots of eminent groups working on this around the world and coming up with responses and recommendations about how we can engage more with more active citizens and use that as an advantage to promote more effective, efficient, and ethical programs. And I'd recommend this report to you, the Leaders Report from 2019, which analyzes this issue and makes a number of recommendations, which we'll go through. There is no shortage generally of evidence about how to engage, work with citizens to produce more effective and efficient social programs. In fact, one of the problems is there is so much data and recommendations about how to go about doing this, many people do not engage with it. That's something we need to rectify in the way that we go about analyzing communication and behavioral change programs, being across this information and intelligence from a variety of different disciplines is going to be important, rather than what I see in a number of countries, information about how to construct social programs that are aimed at influencing behavior coming from one or two fairly narrow approaches to understanding the problem, i.e. psychology. For example, in some government advisory bodies, including my own in the UK, some of our SAGE committees, like a SAGE committee that looks at influencing behaviour, has about 27 people on it, and of that group, about 18 of them are psychologists. Okay, well, psychology is a fantastic source of information about how to influence behaviour, but it's not the only one. We have many other disciplines that have something to add. So we need to get across this broad literature by engaging with a broader range of experts, but also a broader range of representatives from the community as well, and bring their intelligence and understanding to play. So citizens want to be part of the solution, and they're telling us a number of things. They're telling us they don't believe us, they don't trust us, they want us to listen to them, they want to be in control now, and they want to be there helping to solve some of the problems. We know from a lot of research, this is a picture of Friedrich Hayek, a Nobel-winning economist, and what his analysis demonstrates is that social policy fails when interventions are developed according to rational plans developed by experts. Policy tends to work when citizens are involved in problem identification, solution generation, delivery, and evaluation. We've known this for quite some time. There's also lots of policy analysis about why social policy programs actually fail or don't achieve the aims that they set out. And you'll be very familiar with lots of these shortcomings: short-termism, high cost, little understanding of behavior and how to influence it, focuses on activity rather than actual impact and change, poor coordination between government departments, poor evaluation, and top-down driven programs. These are classic markers of policy failure, but we still see too much of it. We know that citizens want to be more in control. There's been a lot of work in the health sectors around the world. The more power and control you put into the hands of users of service, the more they like it, and they tend to ration more than public service providers being in charge. So there's a wealth of evidence that people want this, it can be done, and people actually value it. So it's about moving, I think, from passive end users of public services and social programs to getting and working with citizens to be active co-creators of solutions and delivering social policy. So from an expert-directed model, if you will, I know best, do this, to a situation where we have a citizen-centric model. It's about working with, understanding people, using their expertise to inform and help deliver social programs. Within this, of course, there's a lot's been written about choice, the power of choice within social programs, and the importance of voice, giving people an opportunity to say what they think should happen and why they think that should happen, and their views about various interventions that may be put forward. And I think it's worth kind of differentiating between economic choice, where people might have vouchers for education, for instance, that they can spend, where you actually give them the spending power, and non-economic choice, where maybe people have a choice of a provider of health service or education or social care. So these are, both legitimate strategies. We need to be cognizant of those, and they both can play a role. And voice certainly is important. I think it's really important when governments are developing interventions and they seek to engage citizens, they are very clear about how much sharing of power and how much influence citizens can have in the development and delivery of those programs. Being clear about that up front, but as a very minimum, active effort and resource should be put into giving people a chance to talk about what they feel about an issue, what they feel about how it might be tackled, how it might be evaluated, how it might be delivered, giving them that chance to voice their opinion. Okay, so how we need to kind of engage with people more. There's tremendous asset there that we can tap into. If we work with people, we'll probably get a much more, we certainly will get a more effective and ethical program. How do we go about doing that? Okay, the first thing I want to say is be optimistic. You've already heard, if you've been listening into this festival, some fantastic examples about how to engage with people and work with them. And it can be done. It is being done in many places around the world. There's lots of good examples we can draw on. So things can get better, and we should be optimistic about that. We know that there's been massive social progress over the last 80 to 100 years, and it's a result of a whole range of forms of intervention. So, expert analysis and data collection, epidemiology, and so on, and better management systems, management science, democracy generally, a very powerful force for social good, development of social justice programs and the rule of law, economic progress, etc. This list is not exhaustive, but certainly these are some of the powerful drivers. And what we know is that you need a collection of these things working together, and you get multiplier effects out of that. The more of these things you put in place, the greater the chance of social programs being delivered effectively and efficiently. And we've had huge successes around the world: infant mortality rate reductions, things like smoking related disease reductions, and so on. However, still huge amount to do. We know, again, from lots of analysis and research, that policy that's informed by evidence, theory, data, and psychological insight tend to be more effective. Policies that have clear, measurable aims and objectives, systems and policies that have feedback and learning loops built into them, and sustained and strategic long-term planning, also absolutely key, as is engaging of citizens in the development, delivery, and evaluation of these programs. People like Richard Layard also talk about developing social programs based on what people deeply value, things like trust, respect, and security. That means listening and understanding people and what will move and motivate them. Having a strategic and systematic approach, again, and sustained long-term programs. Michael Sandel, a kind of a legal professor and ethicist, talks about how to do that. And his key notion is one of a new politics of the common good. And what that means is more scrupulous, law-abiding, honest politicians, but also more engaged citizens, engaged in the political process of decision-making and choice, but also delivery. So this is a joint endeavor, is what we're talking about. It's not top-down, it's top-down and bottom-up working together. What underlies the current tension and differentiates different kinds of political approaches are two fundamentally different views, it seems to me, about how to influence people. And one which I would call a kind of a patrician-centric approach views people and how to influence them in a particular way. Generally, people are considered to be ignorant, feckless, passive, habitual. They need guidance, and they're part of the problem that needs to be solved. But there's a different way of looking at this about how humans are, how citizens are, and how we might influence them. And this citizen-centric approach, I think, is one where we view citizens as being informed and the custodians of a deep contextual knowledge and understanding of social problems and issues and how to solve them, of them being ultimately generally very responsible and wishing to do the right thing, of being active and adaptive rather than passive and habitual. They have agency and they have the ability to take control. And what they want is, rather than guidance, they want support that will enable them to act in personally beneficial ways, and also in ways to support their communities. And finally, and probably most importantly, that people represent a huge, largely untapped asset that we can use to help develop, deliver, and sustain more effective social programs. So, we do, within those two different views, and I just flip back, the patrician view, which actually is characterized by many government approaches still, the citizen-centric view, there is a tension here. And it's around fundamental views about freedoms and the threat to those freedoms. And this is a picture of Milton Friedman, obviously a kind of somebody to the right of political and economic thinking. But some of his views, I think, are absolutely pertinent. I think there is a threat coming from men and women of good intention and goodwill who wish to reform us, and they're latching on to old levers of information and economic factors, as well as new approaches to things like behavioral economics, to create situations and change us in a way that they believe will bring about social good. However, and I'll read this quote out because I think it's very important. People with that good intention often are impatient with the slowness of persuasion and example to achieve the great social changes that they envisage. They're anxious to use the power of the state to activate their ends and confident in their ability to do so. However, this concentrated power is not rendered harmless by good intention. I think I get very worried and concerned when I hear people putting forward a view that they know how to influence people's behavior. They have a formula and a set of techniques or tactics that they can apply that will result in a positive outcome. When we want to manipulate and kind of drive people in a particular direction. One, I don't think the evidence is there to support that view. And two, as Friedman says, there are fundamental dangers in that approach. Okay, so do we believe in expert analysis and solution generation, focused on individual change, with the belief that there's a formula that can be applied that results in success every time, and the application of off-the-shelf solutions? Or, as I believe, it's more about developing joint analysis and joint delivery, focusing on, rather than individual community change, rather than there being a ready-made formula, there is rather a process that we need to go through to create potentially effective interventions and then test them. And rather than applying off-the-shelf solutions, developed focused, customized solutions for particular groups at particular points in time in particular settings. Okay, we know top-down policy works, but only under limited conditions. If you have a single organizational authority with power, if you have explicitly agreed objectives and measurements of them, if you have great communication between all levels of an organization, national, regional, local, if you have lots of time and sustained systemic action, and if you have a total agreement about what to do and how to do it and how to evaluate it, top-down interventions can work. Trouble is, these conditions rarely exist, dealing with lots of the complex issues that we deal with. So my argument is, given what we know about developing interventions and the potential power of citizens, that we need to move from an expert-defined model to a citizen-centric and focused model. And that model should be driven by a number of values. We should be thinking about social values and justice. We should be making the thing participatory and emancipatory as well. We should be thinking about mutuality, mutual benefit for all, and reciprocity. It's not just about the government helping you. It's about, as Kennedy would have said, don't ask what your government can do for you, ask what you can do for your government. This is a collective endeavor. Okay, so how are we going to do it? I think three big things we need to do: create some value, co-create value, co-production and relationships, and developing and implementing citizen-focused, sustained systems. And I'll kind of walk you through those. So first of all, and probably most importantly, I think creating social value. So this is away from just top-down agreed social value to one that's collectively agreed with people and delivered by working with them. There are kind of three myths of social policy delivery, I think, that we know what citizens want. If we build it, they will come, and technology is the solution. And I still see a lot of this kind of thinking in social policy development, all of which there are partial truths in some of these things. You great service people are more likely to take it up. Professionals do undertake a lot of research about trying to understand what citizens want, but I'm just saying we need more of that. And technology is probably a key part of the solution these days, but not necessarily the solution. Example in terms of co-creation of social value. Those of you that know the Cool Biz program in Japan, this is an energy saving program, and in Japan it tends to be very warm and humid in the summer, and the required business attire is this kind of dark suit, white shirt, tie. When you get into the office in the summer, the air conditioning is put up a lot to keep the place cool, because you have to wear this kind of clothing. So to create some social value, Japanese government developed a program called Cool Biz, where they decided to work on developing a whole range of alternative work attire that enabled people to turn the air conditioning down in businesses, and in so doing reduce carbon footprint and the need for energy generated through nuclear power stations. This was a collective effort. One, it was understanding what people wanted, the chance to maybe dress a bit differently at work, and it was promoted with companies, with the public sector, with the music industry, with the fashion industry, boy bands and so on, to promote something that actually most people wanted, giving them permission to dress in a different way at work. And even the civil service are allowed to join in Japan now. Another great example I like at the moment, contemporary one, is the Bella Mossa program from Bologna, Italy. As you can see from this picture, lots of narrow streets, lots of people driving in from outside the city centre to work every day, resulting traffic congestion and pollution, CO2. What the government of the city authority, transport authority, developed was this program called Bella Mossa, which basically means good job, and it's about activating and promoting community and individual active transport, cycling, getting the bus in or walking into work. There's an app that tracks how you get into work, and the more miles that you rack up through active transport, you get points. Those points can personally be used for things like a beer or theatre tickets, cinema tickets, ice cream. But you can also, as a community, pool those points and use the money that the government, local government will give you to put towards social programs in your area. So this is an example of government-enabled co-creation of personal and social value. Okay, co-production I've mentioned a few times. I'm going to say just a little bit more about that. It's not about using behavioral science, social marketing to manipulate people into what we want them to do. I think the way forward from here is about understanding and working with people and helping them to adopt behaviors that they ultimately value, even if that means using interventions that introduce things like penalties or fines, compulsion. If people generally support the introduction of those kind of more restricting and negative influences, it seems to me that's perfectly acceptable. This is another great book I would like to recommend to you if you don't know it, haven't read it yet, Humankind by Rutger Bergman. This is a great exposition of why people are not ruthless and competitive and want to kind of do each other down, but rather humans love to work together and support each other generally. He talks about survival of the friendliest, and demonstrates this trait through a whole series of reviews of research and interventions. So working together is a natural part of what it is to be human. It's something we want to do, and when we do it in a coordinated and effective way, things tend to turn out for the better. So in terms of COVID, this is not about herd immunity, creating herd immunity. It's about enhancing and enabling, supporting the development of community protection, for example. So collective value creation, using these innate human traits of reciprocity, mutuality, and cooperation and co-creation, just plays into our strengths. This is what it is to be human. This is what we want to do. We want to trade, we want to exchange, we want to share. If you help me, I'll help you. We want to cooperate and co-create. So this is an easy thing to push for because it's an innate part of how we like to operate as human beings. And great use of that insight in places like Vietnam, where this understanding of how people want to care for each other, where they have kind of pride in their state, and focusing collective action on defeating an external threat, i.e. in the case of a COVID virus, can pay big dividends. Recent OECD Innovation in Government review, I think, also sets out some very helpful building blocks for this kind of co-creation, citizen-centric approach. So what they recommend is investment in building open, transparent, and trust-based relationships with citizens, enabling connections and coordinated actions across all sectors, investing in that, systematic use of data and evidence to inform delivery and evaluation, and again, harnessing citizens' ideas and capacity and capabilities. It's also another great report about co-production. And for those of you that come from a kind of marketing, social marketing background, this plays into techniques associated with co-design, co-delivery, co-review, viral marketing, all of those kinds of well-developed approaches to engaging with and co-creating value. And we've seen, again, another example, people around the world want to make a contribution. When there was a call in the UK, where I'm from, for people to volunteer to take place in vaccine trials or to help generally in community support, millions of people came forward to volunteer. New Zealand, I think, has had some fantastic examples of creating a collective sense, a team of 5 million people, the population, to tackle this external threat of this terrible virus. So tapping into those innate human reactions and preferences can be very, very powerful. So for me, it's about moving from this kind of transactional one-off interaction with citizens in terms of government communication to development of more relational, ongoing, long-term connections with populations and communities to understand, develop, and deliver more effective social programs. And just thinking back to what I was saying earlier about voice, the old model of talking with and engaging with communities was around having a strategy to do that, of course, in terms of your communications, and then some consultation exercises and some communications, outward flowing exercises with communities. The new model, I think, is having all of those things, of course, and investing more in all of them, but integrating them more also. So the need for this continuous proactive engagement and dialogue, not just when things are going bad or when there's a particular problem we want to fix. Okay, so now just spend a few minutes looking at implementing more citizen-focused approaches in more systematic and systems-based ways. This is one of my kind of favorite stories. In many developed countries, some people bypass primary care systems and go straight to accident and emergency departments. And in most areas in my country, what we find if we do some analysis of the data is that there's a small number of people who account for a large number of hospital ambulance call-outs and then transportation to hospital. Rhiannon Monteith was a telephone call operator for an ambulance service in Blackpool, which is in the northern part of England in the UK. And what she'd noticed was that she was getting calls for ambulances from a small number of people, but on a regular basis. And so they did some analysis, and they found that there were about the most frequent flyers or callers of ambulances were about 23 people. So what she decided to do with the support of her management was contact each of these people proactively and ask them how they were doing. Was there anything she could do for them? Why had they made so many calls? And was there anything else that would help them in their kind of daily lives and daily living? So she basically built up a relationship with these people and then started to connect them with other supportive and caring agencies that could help them. And what happened was the frequent flyers dropped by about 90% of their calls, because these people didn't actually, most occasions, didn't need an ambulance. What they needed was some social contact and personal support. So by reaching out to them, connecting with them, and then connecting them to many voluntary and NGO organisations in the community that supplied support, demand on accident and emergency services was reduced. Reach out, speak with, work with local communities, create solutions. To understand some of the kind of complex problems that we're dealing with, we do need to apply some systems thinking if we're going to translate these complex issues into some deliverable programs. And that means investing in coordination with other government agencies and departments, NGO sector and the private sector, bringing together all the expertise that we can and resource that we can to understand these systems in the broadest context, rather than in a siloed way, which we often do in current government kind of programs. So investment in cross-sector, cross-disciplinary understanding, pooling of knowledge and data and understanding, and then the crafting of intervention programs that engage citizens from day one. Okay. Another COVID example of that, Taiwan's population is about getting on for 24 million people. To date, they've had less than 20 deaths in relation to COVID. because from day one they've had a systems-wide approach to tackling this issue and engaging their population in being the conduits for the delivery of many of these programs. And they include, I won't go through this whole list, obviously early and forceful early lockdown, border controls, cross-sector coordination, online feedback from citizens through early adoption of apps, mass information-based national cooperation, the community safety programs, a whole range of interventions where people feel engaged and own the program to tackle COVID-19. We also know, and it's great, this is not new, certainly in the marketing world, design thinking process that focuses on citizen-driven input. So, working with citizens to understand problems, understand potential solutions, implement and then test those interventions. So prototyping, mystery shopping, a whole range of techniques can be used to understand problems and then craft interventions that citizens say and demonstrate will help them. So the application of participatory design is one such technique that we can use when we're developing these systems. Couple of complicated diagrams now, just as we're winding up. If you're in a government department or a big NGO, government agency, we often think about demand, supply, and delivery. And within each of those domains of practice, citizens highlighted in yellow here, and citizen insight and voice and contribution needs to be considered at each of these layers. So when we're thinking about demand, we need to have fed in alongside all our service use data, epidemiology and so on, insights about citizens, what they think, believe, do, what kind of engagement and voice they want to have. We need that data, as you would in a kind of a market research facility in a private sector company. When it comes to supply, we need to know what assets we've got in the community that we can tap into. Might be citizen volunteers, might be community groups and associations, civic groups, faith groups, etc. What's out there that we can work with and tap into? And then when it comes down to delivery, ensuring that citizens are helping us to deliver those programs and giving us feedback on how that's working, how it could be improved, how it could be made more efficient, etc. And if we can kind of think in those terms of demand, supply, and delivery, there are 4 building blocks we need to put in place to ensure that we consider those issues and respond to them. So first of all, investment in understanding citizens. That probably means developing segmentation models. Our citizens are not all the same. We're going to need to develop different kinds of interventions and supports and engagement strategies for different groups of citizens. We're going to need to build service delivery around our citizens, understanding what they value, how to communicate with them best, how to engage them. We need to use that citizen insight to set and deliver objectives. Development of smart, measurable objectives that we can feed back to communities to demonstrate that we're starting to have hopefully a positive impact. And we need to track progress and build relationships and learn. Continuous investment in what would be called customer relationship management in the business sector. Okay, this is the last of the complicated diagrams. If we do all those things, put those building blocks into place, we can create what I would call a citizen franchise. First, that means ensuring that the services we offer and the social policy interventions that we offer are valued and supported by citizens. Next, ensuring that what is promised is actually delivered to the quality standards that we've agreed. And these are the kind of underpinning building blocks of doing that. And then we create a citizen franchise, which means citizens are fully engaged in and supportive of what we are doing. In fact, they start to get to a position where they demand that we keep doing it and keep improving the quality assurance mechanisms of that social policy or service intervention. And now another long list. I include this just for completeness of actions that governments and social agencies and big NGOs can also apply to make sure that they are being citizen focused. So just to run through these quickly: defining the organization's mission in terms of citizen benefits and values, and also building that into the personal appraisal of all people that work in the organization. What are they doing to deliver that? Second, ongoing frontline citizen engagement training, so everybody in the organization knows how and why they should be engaging and supporting citizens. Ongoing citizen insight research and analysis, investing in gathering that data in about the people that we're seeking to work with and support. Explicit goals and systems for measuring engagement and satisfaction. Ongoing proactive information, education and engagement, reaching out to, informing citizens. Tailoring the responses to different groups and segments and being very respectful of different cultural beliefs, understanding and traditions. Delivery coalitions and stakeholder management, developing from the get-go relationships with the NGO sector, the private sector and third sectors, working collectively. User monitoring and citizen feedback mechanisms, citizen volunteering and mentoring and shadowing programs, it should say to, not while, but why. So asking, not just putting our professional expertise into the community, but getting community expertise fed into government and national and local government structures. And of course, the application of technology to enhance staff engagement and satisfaction, much more investment in new communications and social media applications to ensure better dialogue, better engagement, better listening with citizens. Okay, to sum up, there won't be any miracles here, and there are no unicorns. There's no simple 1 or 2 or 3 point solution to this. It's about having a different mindset, about an absolute commitment to working with people and through them, and to applying the kind of pointers that I've been describing and talking about over the last kind of 40 minutes or so. We need to be persistent, consistent and clear, and apply that understanding of what we know works and stop doing stuff that frankly we know does not. What is our purpose? It seems to me that the purpose is participatory, collective, valued social transformation, not just individual change. If it's not just about changing what individuals do, it's about helping society to positively change in a direction that it consents to and supports. This new civic relationship, it seems to me, is a move away from where we've been in the past, this tell, sell and control approach, top-down, professional-led, adult-to-child kind of transactions, to one that's more represented by collective social value creation, built on the basis of respect for people. So working with citizens, understanding people, having adult-to-adult relationships, empowering people, looking at whole system solutions. Fundamentally, this is about listening and being respectful of the populations and citizens that we who are privileged to work in government comms are presumably trying to support and enhance the life chances and experience of. So from top down to the creation of personal and social value through the development of joint responsibility and respect between governments and citizens. Helping citizens to demand engagement in the selection, development, implementation, and evaluation of all programs. If we do this, it seems to me not only does the evidence tell us that our interventions will be more effective, efficient, and ethical and acceptable to the public, but from a professional perspective, personal perspective, it's a more deeply respectful, democratic, and empowering way to work. So I hope that's been of some interest to you. Look forward to answering either verbally or online some of your questions. Thanks for your time, really appreciate it.